Coach Robb Podcast, answering questions and eliminating frustrations about health, wellness, and performance since 1987.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Coach Robb Podcast with a special guest. I'm extremely honored to introduce to you Mr. Josh Gilbert. He is one of the MXGP riders, and I'm going to give him a chance to kind of talk about his team and everything. And before we get started, I just want to thank all of you guys who have been really supporting the Coach Robb Podcast. As we've broken into the new year, we used to do 2 podcasts a month. One would be more concept related and one would be more performance related. And our second podcast of every month will be Meet the Guest. So we've got some really cool people that are lined up. I've got a really cool one with you guys here again today. And for those of you that sent in all the positive responses to Dr. Brainy, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to see that you guys are resonating with the messages that we're trying to get across here. And before we get any too far into this, I just want to say thank you for your continued support, and we deeply appreciate it. So without any further ado, let me introduce and welcome Mr. Josh Gilbert. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So what part of the world are you sitting in this evening?
I'm currently in Belgium. It's a lot different to Spain where I was a couple of weeks ago, but it's a lot damper and a lot colder. But we need to do a bit of the both. We're a bit of dry weather and nice riding down in Spain, and now we're slogging it out in nice wet Belgium.
I love it. For those of you who follow us in the moto capacity, they're going to be very interested. What team are you riding for this year, Josh?
So this year I have changed teams. I'm riding for SS24 Gabriel KTM, and that's for all the MXGP rounds and British Championship.
Fantastic. And your teammate Kaz, I think he's the Italian champion, and I think he did quite well in the MXGPs last year as well, right?
Yeah, so I ride in the MXGP, which is the 450 class. Then there's the MX2, which is 250s. And then Cass is rode in the EMX 250, which is sort of the up and coming younger riders, which then take a step into MX2, where he had third last year and won a couple rounds. And then this year he's planning to go a little bit better and hopefully, win the EMX 250 class for KTM.
Well, in the reason why I wanted you to give the background on Kaz is I think so many people don't realize how influential you are. You're extremely young, but very accomplished. Obviously, you and I were connected via Carrion with the Generate supplement company. And I'm forever grateful for that relationship that I have with Carrion. And I know he's been supporting you since 2018? You guys have been together?
I think it is that long. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah. And the thing that I love about what Carrion is doing is he's very big into trying to grow the sport from the inside out. And I love when you've got a product company, like he reached out to me and said, hey, we've been working with Josh for a while, and we'd love for you to be able to help him answer a lot of questions, whether it's injuries or training or overtraining, nutrition, sleep. And so we're forever grateful to have the opportunity to be able to work with you through Carrion. And I think that relationship is something that's very unique, where not just at the OEM level, but literally at a product level sponsor, here we are connected now via Generate. And I just want to give a props out to Carrion and his vision and for bringing us here together. But the reason why I was asking about Kaz is I think many people don't realize how instrumental you are on kind of developing those younger riders. Do you embrace that type of capacity with the new team?
Yes and no. I mean, I don't feel like I'm too old yet.
No, not at all.
I'm only 26, but obviously I'm still a little bit older than Cass, and it's also quite good for me as well because he is fast, but I'm never actually going to race him.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of we'll never have that kind of rivalry. So I don't mind helping him where he needs helping, and yeah, he can go pretty fast as well. So certain tracks he'll be pushing me on pretty hard, and yeah, I find like we've got quite a good vibe going in the team, and yeah, it's all so far it's all clicking and yeah, going in the right direction really.
I think it's interesting because, and when I say that you're kind of providing some toolage for Cass, and I think everybody's enamored on the idea of getting into that premier level class. You know, like you say, your age doesn't, it's certainly not old in our sport, and you've really come into your own here in these last couple of years. But I think it's always mesmerizing when you see a young and up and comer who can get next to somebody who's in that premier class, and how you guys just do certain things that just doesn't come intuitive. Yes, there's going to always be that foundation of skills and things like that, but like the way you train during the week and not being afraid to kind of pull back and err on the side of caution versus just feeling that you just got to smoke yourself every single day. I think a lot of the young up and comer riders, when they can see someone with your experience and go, hey, wow, and he's not grinding himself to a pulp every single day. He does pay attention to nutrition. He does make sure he knows what his sweat rate is and all that goes with it. I think that becomes a big eye opener for these younger guys. So I think it's really cool what you're doing, especially with a new team, new teammates, and everything all coming together. And I want to kind of back the train up just a little bit. Give the listeners a little bit of background. Where do you actually call home at this point in time? I know you're currently in Belgium, but where do you call home, and where did you grow up?
Yeah, I'm originally from the UK, which is a place called Cornwall, which is when you look at England or the UK, I'm right down the very bottom.
Okay.
Yeah, it's quite a nice part of the country because it's quite quiet, nice bit of coastal. Yeah, lots of beaches. We don't get as good a weather as you guys, but when it is nice there, it's really nice. So yeah, it makes it a little bit harder for traveling for the motocross and stuff. But yeah, I find going back down there to to somewhere I'm quite comfortable with, it's quite nice to just go back home when you're sort of traveling quite a lot.
Yep, absolutely. And just out of curiosity, did you grow up in a moto family?
Yeah, well, my dad raced. He did British Championship and he never did World Championship, but yeah, he was half tidy British rider. And then yeah, he just got me a PW50 when I was 3, and away we went.
And the rest is history. You and I have we have a common friend that you may not be aware of, but I've worked with Richard McEwen for probably the last 4 to 5 years, and of course, with his owning the Desert Martin track and that being on one of the MXGP circuits one year, I guess for more than 1 year, but it's kind of interesting. You know, he's as far north as you can go, and you're as far south as you can go. And I always think it's interesting when we've had a chance to go to the UK. Being able to literally drive across the country in one afternoon is not something that we're used to. But I do agree with you. It is a absolutely beautiful country and very, very peaceful. I've not seen such rolling, lush green mountains and rolling hills like we did when we were there. So I'm envious that you get to call that place home. That's for sure. So when you look at your motocross career, and I know this may sound like an awkward question coming out of the blocks here, when did you know that you were literally a national caliber rider? And I don't mean to put you on the spot because it is going to make you sound like you're being a little bit arrogant, but please don't feel that way. Like when did that that switch in your head flip and go, hey, maybe I can do this at a world level?
Probably 2017, I would say. I mean, I always grew up doing the national championships, British. I won British Championship and that on a small wheel 85. I don't know if do you guys have a small wheel 85 class, or is it just 85?
Yes, we have a couple 85 classes.
Yeah.
The big one, the most prestigious, would be considered super mini.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we just have it would just be a small wheel 80 or 65, small wheel 85, big wheel 85, youth, and then pro.
Okay.
So I pretty much won every British Championship growing up as a kid, and then I took a little bit to get sort of going in the pro class. I kind of thought it would come a little bit quicker than what it did, but yeah. So I would say I had about 2 or 3 years in the pro class before sort of, I don't know, kind of 1 year I decided I was actually part-time working with my dad doing some groundworks, and then I decided, you know what, I need to sort of actually give it a proper go rather than just be sort of almost half-hearted doing it. So yeah, as soon as I decided to go and do it properly, that's when the results started coming in, and I went from around about a seven, eighth, ninth in the British. I then the following year, first round, I went straight to a podium, and then I ended up rounding out that year. Yeah, I rounded out that year with second in the championship. So that was kind of like the biggest turning point in my career, and I've just tried to better it every year, and I guess that's how I've ended up where I am.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you don't mind me asking, who'd you get second to that season?
Conrad Muse.
Okay, all right. Now, for the
Yeah.
sake of the listeners, because I get this quite a bit, when we're working with some of the smaller bikes and some of the moto parents, when you had that mental epiphany where you're like, you know what, I'm going to give it a full go. I'm 100% in. Where would you say you made most of the adjustments? So you have that mental switch that goes, okay, yep, I'm going to make that commitment. I refer to that as that 1 degree of perspective change. All right, I'm committed. Where did you make the greatest changes that you feel gave you that catapult effect to being second in the series that year?
Mainly in my fitness
Okay.
and bike time. That was because obviously I could fully focus on going to the gym, training in the week, doing everything properly, and then making sure I'm on the bike. Maybe not so much in the season, like in the week, maybe once, twice before each race. But it was mainly just the pre-season. Like I had the time to get everything like myself fit, ready, and then just feeling relaxed on the bike, and that all just sort of come round, and I guess all just come together to make one big step in the right direction.
When you talk about that preseason, were you still doing work for your dad, or were you able to just exclusively sleep, eat, train, and repeat?
Just exclusively eat, sleep, train, and repeat. Yeah.
Now, did you guys have a track on your home property, or did you have to travel to be able to ride in that preseason?
No, we don't have a track. I know in America there's a lot of compounds and that floating around, and everyone seems to have the space and everything. But in the UK, it's quite rare to have your own track.
Okay.
So that means a lot of driving, a lot of hours spent on the road, and yeah, it can be quite a graft sometimes trying to drive, train, and ride. It's quite a graft, but yeah, we got there.
Where did you do all your riding? Did you have to go to a public track, or did you go over to Spain
Yeah,
in that
yeah.
preseason?
So in the preseason, we did go down to Spain,
Okay.
and then spent some of the time back at home, just sort of traveling around, mainly public tracks at home, and trying to think if I come out to Belgium much or not. But yeah, that was mainly Spain, and then just getting some decent time physical training at home.
If we look at that preseason and like you were saying, you were really leveraging that opportunity, props to your parents to say, okay, we're gonna go in all in on this. How many days a week were you riding in an ideal situation at that time?
I would say 3 to 4 times in the preseason.
And if you don't mind sharing it, if you're not comfortable, by no means do you have to share it. But I would just be curious if we were to go back and look at your training logs, because obviously you and I weren't working together back then. How did you break up those 4 days? Let's say you were riding 4 days a week. How would you break that up And like, did you do like a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, or was it more circumstantial based on track availability?
So if I go to Spain, it was normally 2 days on, 1 day off, roughly around that.
Okay.
But then when I'm at home, because of the weather, again in the UK, it's sort of, you kind of got to look at the weather and think, if I ride Tuesday, it's going to be wet Wednesday, so the tracks aren't going to be open on Thursday. Oh, I'll ride Friday.
Okay.
So it's quite it's quite hard to structure week by week in the UK. That's why it's so good to go to Spain, because you can go down there and set out what you want to do. You know the weather's going to be good, and you can just get some good solid riding in. But then again, like, I'm in Belgium now for 2 weeks, and although the weather's not as good as Spain, the tracks can take the rain majority of the time. So you can kind of get some good solid riding in over here too, and the tracks are pretty savage over here.
Absolutely. And are you at the liberty to be able to say where you're at in Belgium and where you'll be riding these next couple of weeks?
So the team have got a place just outside of Lommel, which is the renowned the renowned horrible track. So yeah, we've sort of, well, actually, I've only ridden two tracks. One's called Bergam and one's called Grevenbroich, which is just into Germany.
Okay.
Lommel hasn't actually been open; it's been so wet.
Wow.
So yeah. Hopefully the weather gets a little bit better and we can get on it. But looking at the forecast, I think it's just going to be one of those two tracks for the next few days.
That makes sense. It's got to be a lot of water if Lommel is too wet to ride, considering how much water that is.
Exactly.
When you guys were in Spain, where did you hub out of, and how many tracks did you have access to? Because I've heard if you get in the right spot, you could have a multitude of tracks within just a couple-hour drive. Is that true?
Yeah. So a lot of people base themselves at Benicassim, which is about 20 to 30 minutes from Red Sands. I don't know. Have you ever heard of Red Sands?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that is kind of a lot of the Euro guys spend time either there or in Sardinia, which is Italy, a little island off of Italy.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, so we spent our time at Red Sands. There's three tracks at Red Sands, so you got a good variation there. And then there's a lot of other little tracks around there as well. So you've probably got, I'd say, a variation of at least 8 tracks. That's including CDG, which is a couple-hour drive from there. But that track is, they prep that so good in. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called CDG Resort or
Okay.
Retreat.
Okay. No, I've not heard of that one.
It's it's such a cool track up. It's quite high up in the hills and a bit of a drive, but yeah, the guy preps it so well there, and yeah, it's just, you get such a good buzz by riding it.
Yeah, you kind of piqued my interest because when we hear the word resort, there's usually accommodations, restaurants, swimming pool. Is all that on property at that
No,
track?
it's not
Okay,
actually. No, it's not.
that's all right.
Funnily enough.
We're just we're picturing this motocross, paradise where you've got fine restaurants and dining, and you've got this beautiful motocross track at the top of the mountain. So you kind of piqued my interest with that one. I do have to ask this, being from Florida and it gets below 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and I've got to grab a jacket because I'm freezing to death. You could put it in terms of Celsius, that's fine. What is the coldest, not race, but what's the coldest day you've ridden on in your career? What do you think it's the coldest day?
I would say the first one that springs to mind is when I was out here before Christmas.
Okay.
We did a few days and we went to Grevenbroich, which is in Germany again, and it was, I think, -4, and it had like it was a wind chill as well, and it was so cold. It was miserable, absolutely miserable.
Was it
But I
spitting as
don't.
well as being cold?
No, it was actually dry. It
Okay.
wasn't raining,
Thank
which is a
goodness.
bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what would you recommend? Like, how do you keep your hands warm in situations like that? I've heard people say they'll put rubber gloves underneath, especially if there's some moisture, but how do you keep your hands from getting so doggone cold?
So yeah, that is one thing I used to do. I try and run hand guards in the winter as well, just to take any slight bit of wind that can possibly hit you. And just try and wear some thicker gloves. Quite a lot of the
Okay.
brands now, they do sort of a winter glove, so it's thicker on the top.
Yep.
So that, yeah, those are the kind of things, and just man up basically.
Yeah. That's what I love about the Europeans. They're just like, all right, there's a point of you just got to man up. You just got to grow a set and you just got to go. I think you said it better than any American could ever say it. I work on gloves, hand guards, man up. There you go. That coming from the mouth of
Yeah.
a champion. Now, I have to kind of go geeky here, and I hope the listeners will be patient with me. When you get those types of conditions where it's literally below zero, what is your go-to for a warm-up? Like, is there a preference? I know you don't have the luxury of the factory rig always being there, but like when you guys are out on practice day, what's your go-to for a warm-up to get the blood circulating?
So do you mean like as in a little warm up moto, or do you mean to before you even get on the bike?
Before you even get on the bike, what's your go-to historically?
Um, so probably in those conditions, if it was that cold, I'd rather go for a little jog in the morning, just because cycling would be so cold before you even get on the
Yeah.
bike. So yeah, a little jog to warm up, maybe a few little bit stretching, and wear a hoodie, I guess.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Are you comfortable if I just share a little bit of our information together? I won't give away confidential info.
Yeah, that's fine.
One of the things that I thought was interesting is when you and I looked at the sweat rate when it's cold, and this catches a lot of people off guard because they think because the ambient air temperature is chilly that you're not sweating. And here in the States, you have a lot of people that do snowmobiling and ice racing and things like that. And I always try to bring to their attention, when you peel those layers of clothing off, think about how much moisture has been lost. Because even though we may have a relatively cool ambient air temperature, it doesn't detract away from the amount of heat that the human body's producing. Just like a motorcycle, even though the air is cold, doesn't mean that the bike's not producing heat. And a lot of people have a tendency to kind of miss that mark and they go, well, I don't need to drink as much because it's not as hot and humid. And that's not always the case. I'm not going to say it always is or it always isn't, but that was something that I found interesting when we looked at your data, red sands and some of the ones that you did in Germany. I've always enjoyed looking at your numbers because it's like, wow, it's impressive to see how much water is lost. And of course, in that sweat, we're losing electrolytes, water, we're burning sugar, we're burning electrolytes every time a muscle contracts. And I thought that was pretty interesting. I thought if we put it in a perspective of how cold we're really talking about, I think people will go, wow, it's who would have thought sweating in those conditions would even matter? So it's pretty interesting. Let me go down another trail just out of curiosity. Um, so you got a PW when you said you were what, 3 or 4?
Yeah, 3 years old.
All right. So when you were growing up, were there any other sports that mom and dad had you involved in?
No, not really.
Okay.
I I quite enjoyed like PE and stuff at school because
Yeah.
I didn't have to sit in a classroom. I'd say I was quite active as a kid. Uh,
Absolutely.
we 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 didn't live. We still don't. We don't live in a town or a city or anything. So we I had a couple neighbours that we just used to go out and build some push bike jumps and
There you
just
go.
just do all those sort of things. Yeah, I wouldn't say I did. They didn't push me into any other sport. I just kind of enjoyed going out on my push bike, playing football at school, playing rugby, just general kind of kids things. But then, yeah, I'd always rather get on my motocross bike when I could.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned a couple of those rugby, football. Were you relatively decent at it? Did you feel like you could have done as well there as you've done in moto?
Um, Probably not. No, I enjoyed it and I was okay, but yeah, I'd never even crossed my mind about continuing with either of those. I did quite like BMXing, and I still do quite like mountain biking. But yeah, I just enjoy doing them, and I'm okay at them. But I never even thought about taking them seriously.
For us stateside, when you watch something like rugby, and I don't want this to, especially for anybody who's on that side of the pond, I'm not saying this disrespectfully, it's actually a compliment. We watch rugby games, and for us, that's like the American version of kill the man with the ball on the playground, right? I mean, there's no helmets protecting the face, the ball's flying up in the air. These huge men are just
Yeah.
charging at each other, they're pouncing on each other. And it's like the ball pops up, and then it's just kill the man with the ball over and over again. And you're just like, oh my gosh. I don't know that I would call that a sport. I would call that, torture, because the size of those guys. And again, I say, I hope that didn't come across the wrong way. I'm not saying it's a sport in regards to, I couldn't even imagine volunteering to even want to participate in that, where these men are so fast, so big, so strong, with next to no gear on. It's not like our football where we've got helmets and eye protectors and mouth guards and pads and, from head to toe. Yeah, I've always been amazed at what you guys do recreationally. I'm like, that would be like a gladiator fight in my eyes. So mad respect for you guys in what you do there. With you only being at the age of 26, you've accomplished so much at such a young age. Where do you find the passion? Where does the passion come from?
I would say it would have started from my dad.
Okay.
He obviously, like I said, raced, and then if it wasn't for him, I don't know if I would be riding or not, because he's the guy that got my first bike and chucked me on it and said, crack on. So probably, yeah, it's come from him. But then the more I've ridden myself, and I guess the more I've just loved riding, and yeah, it's spiraled from that really. And now even now I think I'm living the dream.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because when Prado was on Gypsy Tales with Jace, I thought it was interesting at such a young age to be a world champion, where he still has an appreciation for the privilege of being a professional. And I love hearing you say the same thing. You're living the dream, because I think so many people, and I'm going to kind of throw the Americans under the bus here for just a moment. We hear most of the top guys complaining about the grind. Got to travel, got to train, have to do signings, and we got autograph sessions and photo sessions. And I'm like, I always have a little bit of a problem with that, because it's almost as if they act surprised that this is part of the job. And no disrespect, again, I'm not pitting the Euros against the Americans, but when you hear Prado, he's come over here to the States and he's on Jace's, and he's exuberant with so much energy and joy, like this is a lifetime dream. I'm over here. And here you said the exact same thing. I'm living the dream. I think it's pretty fascinating. What is it that, if we stay on that thread of passion for a moment, obviously it's difficult. You just mentioned it yourself. You're in Belgium for a couple of weeks. I know when you and I were talking a couple months ago, you were jet setting across quite a few different countries. Where do you find that passion to keep getting up every morning and doing it over and over again? Is there anything in particular that just really lights your fire? Is it something you think about? Is it something that you aspire to?
I would say I I just want to get better every day. And if I've got to do a certain thing, then I will get up and do it, because I would say I'm pretty self-motivated. So yeah, there's not a certain thing that sort of gets me going. I quite enjoy just the general process, and I can't really imagine myself doing anything else other than what I'm doing. So yeah, I'm just just enjoying what I'm doing, really.
That's awesome. Let me put you on the spot here. So most people, they want to be a champion, right? I say this to all my athletes. That to me is not really a goal, because it's everybody's goal. And I know that sounds a little bit curt, and I don't mean for it to, but I always say there's got to be something bigger than just becoming a champion. And I know people have a problem with that because there's not a lot of champions in the world. I also say to my clients, winning the first championship isn't as hard as winning it the second time. And they go, oh, that'd be a nice problem to have. When we get to the end of the season and you're MXGP champion, do you think you'll still have that same fire in the belly? Or do you think you'll have it even more so? Again, not a loaded question, but from your perspective.
I would say I'd want more.
And when you achieve that final, like at the end of this season, everything goes right, you stay super healthy, you continue to stay, injury free. When you get to that championship status, have you thought much about what kind of surprises are going to come with that type of responsibility and that title?
No, not really, but I would say I cope with pressure quite well. So I feel that no matter what I did, I would just, once I get on the bike and got to do what I got to do, then I know that that's what I would be able to do. I don't feel like I would crumble if I had to, if the level did get a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? If it did to get like I had to meet certain requirements, then yeah, I just feel like I'd be able to cope fine with it.
You just mentioned something that I know is going to pique the interest of every moto parent in the world, and that is, you mentioned that you handle pressure. Where do you think that you've acquired, or how did you acquire that attribute? Because that's obviously something that people work their entire life trying to be able to handle pressure. Where do you think at such a young age you've developed that ability to handle it?
I would say it kind of helps that I'm quite a chilled out person. Uh, like my girlfriend and that they say if I was any more chilled out, or any more horizontal, I'd be I'd be dead. So yeah, I would say I'm quite a chilled out person. So that helps. And I guess just almost confidence in myself a little bit. I know that when I put the helmet on, I'm just going to give it 100%, and yeah, I should be able to do the job, no problem.
You mentioned a couple minutes ago a word that I love to hear, and that's the word process. I think so many people, they get to the top, they've lost the joy of the process. Is there any part of the process right now that you don't enjoy? And I know you're a very positive person, and I don't ask that to be negative, but there's a reason why I'm asking. Is there any part of the process that you currently don't enjoy?
I would say when it's raining, hammering down, and you've got to go out and do two motos. That's sometimes when you feel like this is a bit of a graft. But afterwards, the satisfaction you get from doing almost the harder things, once you've done it and it's done, it kind of makes you almost feel better. So you know, even before you go out for that moto, if I get it done, then I'm going to feel so much better driving home.
Absolutely. Now, with that being said, what's the most difficult track you've ever raced?
It's probably close between Lommel or Os, which is a Dutch track.
Okay.
It probably also didn't help that I had ACL reconstruction and I had just been back for I'd literally been on a bike for 3 or 4 weeks before the race, and the team that I was with at the time actually didn't want me to do it. But I was sort of keen to do it, and I wanted to get more bike time, and I just thought that if I go there and I can improve each, because I think I did Lommel and Os 2 weekends back to back, and I thought it would just help build my strength up doing the races, get a bit more race intensity. but actually looking back now, it was almost the wrong thing to do, because it was too early, and I ended up just, it was a struggle.
Did you end up re-injuring the knee, or were you able to get through those 2 weekends?
No, the knee was actually fine. Because I had, after my ACL, I did 3 months of rehab, and then so for about four months, just over, that's when I did the GP. But it was just lack of bike time that I was missing, and we went to two of the most hardest tracks on the calendar. So
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't a smart move on my behalf. I should have listened to the team, but I just really wanted to get racing and almost play catch up, but I should have been a little bit smarter then.
Well, and that's always the hard part. I say to my clients all the time, we never want to take the fire out of the belly. And it's difficult because you as an elite athlete are in a catch 22, because if you concede and then you don't do the race, well, then people could say, well, does he really want it? And then if you go out and you do it and it was a little bit early, well, should he have done it? So you're kind of darned if you do and darned if you don't as an athlete, because you don't want to give the wrong impression, but you're also trying to play the long game. And that's the difficult part with our sport, is we're only as good as our last race that most people have a tendency to remember. So it's
Yeah.
it's definitely a difficult place to be in. And I apologize. When you mentioned the knee injury, did you say ACL, MCL? Which one did you tear up?
ACL, and I also had to have a bit of my meniscus taken out also.
Okay. Was it torn, the meniscus itself, or was it just like, what would they clean it up, or they actually remove part of it?
They had to they had to remove 25% of my meniscus,
Oh,
because it had, yeah, I'd done quite a good job, and my ACL was fully snapped.
if you don't mind me asking, how did you actually hurt it? Was it just an accumulative thing, or was it one big accident?
Uh, Looking back now, I did it. I sort of tried to go without my ACL for 2 years, um, but I wish I sort of got it done sooner now. I did it. I just, in a crash, it was a wet race. I remember I went through a set of rollers and got it wrong, and then I put my foot out and just twisted all on that one leg, and I got back up, and yeah, my leg didn't feel like my bottom part of my leg didn't feel like it was attached.
Oh
So
gosh.
yeah, it was a bit of a funny feeling, and I did finish the race, but we was riding around pretty much on one leg.
And I know with the help of Carrion and Generate and the nutrition side, they had you dialed in, because obviously we weren't working together then either. But what exactly, how many days a week did you do the physio? I think this is very important for people that have had knee injuries. When you make the comment that you did that for 4 months, how many days a week on average did that consist of, Josh?
Every day.
Every
Um,
day.
yeah, so stretching, trying to spin out on a push bike, just yeah, trying to do as much as I can without overdoing it. It was quite a fine line, but I felt like I mastered. I had a good balance of what I needed to do to, well, and that's why I got back, I think, so quickly.
Mm-hmm. With that being said, because I say this as often as I can to anybody who's willing to listen, the doctors, they're extremely smart. They're good at what they do. The person that's going to move you along the furthest and the shortest amount of time is going to be that physio, because they're measuring your range of motion using an ergometer meter, right? You come in on Monday, you're at 12 degrees. By Friday, you're at 13 or 14 degrees. They understand where that progress is being made. They understand how it's being made. And to me, that's an incredible confidence builder for you, where you're like, okay, I put in 5 days of physio and we've got 7 degrees range of motion and the pain's gone from a 10 to a 8.5. Were you given one person that you got to work with, or did you have to work with different physios during those 3-4 months?
So I had one main guy. I didn't actually see him every day, but he gave me things to do
Yeah.
to to get on with. But then I went through a private hospital to have it done, and then every now and again I would go back. Sort of every 2 weeks I would go and see them. But then yeah, the main one was the guy behind it all, as in the one I was speaking to out of the hospital. He helped me a lot, and yeah, big thanks to him. Yeah, we got there.
Yeah, I always say try to get your physio's phone number, keep them on speed dial,
Yeah, exactly.
because if you can, heaven forbid, if you have a regression or you feel like maybe the pain instead of subsiding is going up, that's the person you want to buy dinner and say, I'll meet you at your office, I'll meet you at your house, I'll meet you at the beach, I'll meet you anywhere that you're at for convenience. Because to get that person and get their hands back on you and be able to help you as as an athlete that's trying to get the physio and still get back to the world-class level. And I think a lot of people misunderstand, when you become injured, this is when you're not injured, and then you become injured. It's not just about getting back to where you were. You've got to get to where you were and still keep going. And I think that's why I try to preach, build a relationship with a good physio, build a relationship with a good massage therapist, because next to your partner, nobody's going to know your body as intimately as those people, muscle patterns,
Yeah,
problems, issues. And you and I've talked about this off the record. The more reports we get from a physio, a chiro, from a massage therapist, we can incorporate that into your training program. We don't want to over strengthen something that's already a problem, and we don't want to be remiss on something that needs to be addressed. And you and I are 6,000 miles apart from one another. It's difficult I can't get my fingers on you every day where they can provide you and I a report, and we do, and make a lot of adjustments off of it. So I hope that really resonates with the listeners. Here you are in the prime of because what year did that happen, Josh? Was that 2 years ago?
yeah. So 2 years ago, I had the operation.
And I think it's so important, especially for the young listeners. We can't think about next week, much less think about 2 years from now. And that's why I appreciate your story, because yeah, like you said, maybe you shouldn't have even come back as soon as you did, but you put in those 3-4 months, you were dedicated to it. You had a designated physio, and now look at you. We're going MXGP racing again this year. Solid as a rock. Numbers look phenomenal. Nutrition's dialed, hydration's dialed, sleep is good. I don't think you'll have a problem with me saying this, but one of the things that you and I've talked about, and I've even teased you, for those of you that follow me for any period of time, we use the Garmin platform to analyze sleep and activity. And Josh is one of maybe one athletes that I have that can get his body battery to 100 on so many consecutive days. So I've had people say, there's no way you can get a body battery to 100. And I think, what we say, Josh, out of 30 days, I think you had 4 that were not 100. And one of those was because you got 4 hours of sleep because you had raced, and then you had to turn around and grab a flight the next morning. So I think you got 3.5 hours, maybe 4 hours of sleep that night. And body battery, I think, went to an 86 or something. But for the most part, you're the only person I have that when we look at that body battery report, it's redlining at the top, 100, 100, 100, 100, 100. And I do like to share that with my clients because it is achievable. It's work, but it's definitely achievable. So you've done a great job in that regards, especially for somebody who's in and out of airplanes, no illness. You do bounce back from a lot of adversity pretty quickly. Let's just say if we fast forwarded, you've 5-time, 6-time world champion. What do you think the next chapter, like if you weren't currently racing, you've already finished, you've checked all your boxes. Where do you see that next stage for Josh? Where would you like to be after being a multi-time world champion?
I haven't thought too much on that yet, just because I still feel like I've got a long time. Well, I hope that I've got a long time in my career left with racing.
Absolutely. Yep.
But it would be nice to have something like training, or maybe running a team, or I would still like to be involved in motocross.
Okay.
No matter what.
Now, you mentioned your dad. Does he have his own business? You say he does, like.
Yeah, so he does a groundworks, and then he has his own plant hire. It's not very, it's just sort of him and a machine, and then he subbies into other groundworks companies. So that it's not a very big business, but yeah, it seems to work okay for him. And
Sure.
And it was okay for when I could do a little bit of work with him. I don't really want to rush back to that.
So if you got put into a team capacity, obviously getting to be the team manager is always the pinnacle, but is there any area that you're fascinated with? You like the chassis, suspension, motor, like what, let's assume it's not physical fitness. If you're in a team environment, what area would you like to be involved with the most?
Probably the trainer part would be the most interesting. Um, I've got, I mean, I know how to go around a bike a little bit with knowing what to check and nuts and bolts and the general sort of things, but other than that, I have no interest in mechanicking.
That
So
makes sense.
definitely not a mechanic. So yeah, it would more likely to be if like a trainer or someone who sort of oversees everything.
And I'm so glad to hear you say that selfishly, because that's part of our business model is we want to make sure that when people like yourself are done, we don't lose them out of the sport because of your experience and everything that you can bring. I mean, when we say let's give back to the sport, what young athlete couldn't benefit from, hey, you, Josh Gilbert, talking to a young athlete? I know what you're going through. I know what you're thinking. It doesn't matter what I say as a physiologist or anything else. Nothing replaces you've been there, you've done that. You can empathize legitimately with what they're going through. That's why I'm so desperately trying to be able to provide a network of facilities around the world where someone like yourself, under our toolage, you absorb everything about nutrition and physiology, but then please go work at one of our facilities so you don't leave the sport. We need that knowledge. We need that experience because I think that's what's going to build, just like you said, how do you teach a young child to nut up? You know what I mean? As much as we joke about it, I mean, how do you, it's easy for somebody who's never been there to say, just do it, Johnny, just do it. And you're like, no, let's talk about how I did it. And that's what I think is so, invaluable in the bigger scheme of things. So I'm very enthralled that you'd be like, yes, I'm going to give back. I'm going to come in as a trainer. And, especially in Europe, you see a lot more of that where they do stick around and they come back and they share that experience, like with Stefan and those types of guys. So very, very cool.
Yeah.
If I were to grab your phone right now, who is the most influential person on your phone? Who's the most influential person on your phone?
Oh, that's a tricky one. Um, oh dear, put me on the spot there with that one. Influential. I quite like looking at what Ken Roxon uh does just for his training little routines he does. He puts some cool little ideas up. And he always looks like he's pretty in shape.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
he's quite open to showing everyone what he does, whereas most motocross athletes they're quite quiet, and which I am myself. I'm quite a quiet guy, but yeah, to see he's not afraid to sort of go out on social media and show off what he's doing. So yeah, it's quite cool to see sometimes.
What about if I went to your contact list on your phone? Who would you say is the most influential person in your personal phone log?
My girlfriend would kill me if I didn't say her.
We'll leave it at that one because we don't want to get you into a hornet's nest under any circumstances. If you could get access to anybody's phone number, doesn't even have to be in the sport of moto, whose phone number would you like to have in your phone?
Ooh, um, I would say Caroli,
Okay.
just because it would be interesting to see what he would do in certain situations.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Have you had a chance to ever meet him?
Yeah, once actually, because I mean, I have raced against him, but
Sure,
never.
sure.
I don't really know the guy
Yep.
until I had that massive crash at Hangtown. I don't know if you've seen that when I come out
Yep.
in 22. It sort of made social media, and it kind of it went off. that, and also that's probably one of the biggest crashes I've ever had. But he actually come up to me at Thunder Valley the following week and asked if I was okay.
Very
So, but
cool.
other than that, I've not really had much to do with him.
That's awesome. And the last question I have for you is you mentioned your girlfriend there. Does she come from a moto background?
No, she doesn't. We actually met in school, and
Okay.
so she's not from motocross background. She just went to school, just a normal girl, and yeah, we ended up meeting, and that was that.
That's awesome. Now, does she get to travel with you full time at this point in your program?
uh, some of the time she still has a job back at home. She's
Okay.
not with me right now,
Gotcha.
but she came out to Spain with me a couple of weeks ago, and she'll probably come to most, if not all, the races. Just so like I have someone there between her and my dad. They're kind of they're always, a lot of the time, if it's not one, it's the other. They're sort of supporting me. And then my mum doesn't really like watching the bikes, so she'll maybe check on my laps from at home. And she does come to the odd race, but yeah,
Okay.
she doesn't really watch the racing, so there's not much point of being there.
Was your mom dating your dad when he was racing full time?
Yeah, she was.
Oh my goodness. So she must be like, gosh, I thought this was over and now I've got to go through another generation of it.
Yeah.
We're prematurely aging mom with stress, right? That's probably not a very nice thing for us to do.
I think mum gets more stressed out when I was racing than when my dad was.
I would believe that. Yeah. Well, you're flesh and blood of hers. So there's always that hard part of, oh my gosh, that's my baby out there. My baby could get hurt. And obviously you've had a few injuries here and there. So well, Josh, I can't thank you enough on behalf of all of our listeners and subscribers. I know they're going to really, really appreciate the time that you've given us. I want to thank Kerrion with Generate Sports Supplements. He's been fantastic. I'm forever in debt of him connecting us together. And man, all I can say is on behalf of all of us on this side of the camera, we wish you the very best this year. I don't know if your schedule will permit, but if possible, maybe at the end of the season, we can get you to come back on and maybe we could talk about the whole journey of the year. And if you're comfortable with that, maybe we can make that happen.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Thank you. Yeah, and I'd just like to say a big thanks to Kieran as well. Yeah, he's been mega. The Generate drink, I've used it for years now, and I would swear by it. The electrolytes and the protein shake, it's all really good stuff. Tastes great, and yeah, just thank you for being there and supporting me.
Absolutely. Well, I know it sounds a little bit, fluffy sometimes, but it's so cool when you find a company that invests in the sport that we enjoy. And it's very hard to get companies to really see the passion that our sport does have. So yeah, it is cool. And I'm glad we've got a common friend that invests in both of us and has brought us all together. And then hopefully we can, like Johnny Hopper says, tide raises all boats. And so that's our goal, is that the three of us could just keep upward and onward. And I'm really looking forward to watching you put that MXGP championship on the top of the podium at the end of the year, buddy.
That would be nice.
Thank you so much for your time, buddy. We'll see you soon.